When we set sail, we cannot direct the wind. All we can do is adjust the sails of our ship. And it is easier to turn a ship that is in motion, even if it may be going in the wrong direction, than to start a ship that is stationary. St. Paul was like a ship going in the opposite direction until, by the power of the Spirit, he met the risen Lord and he was transformed. In preparation for the Feast of Pentecost, we are doing a series of sessions on the Holy Spirit and on the impact and influence that he had on the lives of some of the personalities mentioned in the Bible. E is equal to mc square. This was Einstein's theory of relativity that was put forth through this equation. Many did not understand it in his days. Even today, many fail to understand the meaning of this theory of relativity. Could we say St. Paul is like a modern day Einstein with regard to theology and philosophy? As St. Peter says in his letter to Peter 3:15 and 16, he says that our brother Paul makes mention of these things in his letter with the wisdom that is given by God. And there are things which are hard to understand in his letters. Paul was one of the most influential and also the most controversial missionaries that ever lived. In Christianity, we can say that next to Jesus, no one has had such an influence. The letters that he wrote, they form nearly 1/4, a quarter of the New Testament. Paul was filled with the power of the Holy Spirit. When he encountered Jesus on his way to Damascus, he was transformed. He would boast that he was a Hebrew of the Hebrews, the Pharisee of the Pharisees, educated at the feet of Gamaliel. And he was all out to persecute and destroy the church of Christ, because he was wondering how could this person who was crucified, a person who was crucified was supposed to be under God's curse. So how could this crucified person be the Messiah? And it was when he, under the promptings and the guidance of the Holy Spirit, understood the rightful role of Jesus, it is then that he wrote that verse in Galatians chapter 3 verse 13, where he said that Christ became a curse for us by taking upon himself the curse of the law. For it says, cursed is every man who is crucified. He says in the letter to the Galatians, chapter 1, in verse 13, I was violently persecuting the church of God and was trying to destroy it. I advanced in Judaism beyond many among my people of the same time, for I was far more zealous for the traditions of my ancestors. But when God, who had set me apart before I was born and called me through his grace, was pleased to reveal his Son to me so that I might proclaim him among the Gentiles, I did not confer with any human being, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were already apostles before me. But I went away at once into Arabia, and afterwards I returned to Damascus. Then after 3 years, I did go up to Jerusalem and to visit Cephas and stayed with him 15 days. And later on he says that many heard about me, but they did not know the truth. All they heard was the one who was formerly persecuting us is now proclaiming the faith he once tried to destroy. The persecutor became the persecuted. Paul said that when he had an encounter of Christ, he did not consult any human authority, but he went into Arabia, and after 3 years he came out. Arabia symbolizes and is a desert area. What was Paul doing there? He was very well educated in the law, and it was there that now he went through the entire law under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. and he was more than convinced that Christ is the Messiah. He absorbed that encounter that he had with Christ. Paul, when he came to the Corinthians, he said, I did not come to you with flowery language or with words of wisdom. He speaks about it in 1 Corinthians 2, verses 4 and 5. He says, but I came to you with the demonstration of the power of the Spirit, so that your faith may not rest on human wisdom, but on the power of God. St. Paul also said in 1 Corinthians 3:16 and 6:19, do you not know that your body is the temple of God and that the Holy Spirit dwells within you? St. Paul was very zealous to proclaim the gospel. He said in Romans chapter 1 verse 16, I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God unto everyone who believes, Jews as well as Gentiles. And he further said, woe to me if I preach not the gospel. He speaks again in 2 Corinthians chapter 3 verses 14 onwards. He says that whenever the Jews read the scriptures, whenever they read Moses, a veil covers their mind. But he says that when they turn to the Lord, the veil is removed. The Lord is the Spirit, and where there is the Spirit of the Lord, there is freedom. Paul went through a lot of suffering in his life. That's why he said in Philippians chapter 1 verse 29 that God has graciously given you the privilege not only to believe in him but also to suffer for him. And in the letter to the Romans he says in chapter 8 verses 17 and 18, he says that if we suffer with him, we will also be glorified with him. Paul's ministry had begun with the prompting and guidance of the Holy Spirit. We read in Acts chapter 13, when the community was worshipping the Lord in fasting and in prayer, they were asked to set aside Paul and Barnabas for the mission to which the Holy Spirit had called them. And Paul, from the start to the end, went about preaching the gospel with the power of the Holy Spirit. Paul gives so much emphasis to the Holy Spirit. He uses the term Holy Spirit nearly 115 times in his letter. Under different titles, he refers to the Spirit as the Spirit of God, the Spirit of Christ, the Spirit of life, the Spirit of wisdom and revelation, and so on and so forth. Paul describes his sufferings in 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verses 23 onwards. He says, are they ministers of Christ? I am a better one, with far greater labors, far more imprisonments, with countless floggings and often near death. 5 times I have received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rod. Once I received a stoning. 3 times I was shipwrecked. For a night and a day I was adrift at sea. On frequent journeys in dangers from rivers, dangers from bandits, danger from my own people, danger from Gentiles, danger in the city, danger in the wilderness, danger at sea, danger from false brothers, through many a sleepless night, hungry and thirsty, often without food, cold and naked. And besides other things, I am under daily pressure because of my anxiety for the churches. How could a person possibly undergo all this suffering and yet say that I consider the sufferings of the present time as nothing compared to the glory that will be revealed? How could such a person who was persecuted almost all over the place say, if God be for us, who can be against us? It was because of his conviction and his relationship with the Holy Spirit. As he could say in Ephesians 3 verses 20 and 21, to him who by his power at work within us is able to accomplish much more than we can ever see, ask or imagine. To him be the glory. We also have the same Holy Spirit given to us. We need to respond to the Holy Spirit just as Paul responded to the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit will use us as powerfully as he used Paul. He awaits our response. We shall sing the hymn, Holy Spirit, come with your fire.